and gentlemen, today is March 29th, 2017, and of course a few things are happening that I'd like to point out. Before I get into the main topic, I'd like to point out that isn't it interesting how Republicans, so-called Republicans, we'll call them rhinos, and most of them are like that. They talk about needing to make changes, and then when they have the opportunity, they don't do it. They didn't refuse Obama's agenda, and they're trying to stop Trump's. Now, to me, that tells me that, you can't serve two masters. So who is it that they're really working for? It's pretty obvious, and this is really showing everyone, I think, what the real issues are here and who controls the government. And that's something I want to point out to begin with. I also wanted to point out this thing in the Bundy trial real quick. This Burleson guy again. Out of all the defendants so far, he's the only one that talked about violence and wanting to shoot people and things like that during testimony in the trial. And he's the one who's the informant and has now been exposed as that. So how can the jury be allowed to have the testimony from Burleson that he wanted to institute violence, and then by guilt by association try to put that on all of the other defendants? The court system, the DOJ and the FBI, they're all criminal, they're all corrupt. And of course this is all about protecting Hillary Clinton and the Russia One deal and Harry Reid and his nefarious actions there in Utah. That's all this is about. I just wanted to bring that out. And now I want to get into the real crux of what I wanted to talk about today, and it's about this COG again, because I think that's going to play a larger and larger part. Alex Jones had a very good clip on it, part of his show yesterday. I've included that in the links below because I want you to see it. Also a link below on the Atlantic Monthly, which I think is fairly important that you read. I have some of it here. I'm going to preface this by saying this. You remember Lord of the Rings? You remember Sauron and Saruman had this army that was coming after, all the people there. And King Aragorn went to try to warn the king of Rohan about this. And the king of Rohan, once he was brought out of his spellbound stupor, basically told Aragorn and Gandalf that he was not willing to bring war on his people. And this was King Aragorn's response. War is upon you, whether you admit it or not. Or something to that effect. I hope President Trump understands that war is upon him and upon all the American people that wanted to throw off the chains of this tyranny that has grabbed our nation and its governing institutions. It's really about that time. Okay, before I get going any further, I also want to point out that Obama armed so many alphabet agencies that shouldn't have been armed with military weapons. You remember that? Billions of rounds of ammunition that went to the Social Security Administration, the EPA, the Department of the Interior, the BLM, etc., etc., etc. And now we know that these agencies were stacked with leftist Marxists by Obama over the last 8 years, and probably even in the Bush administration, and further back. And I think now we have to ask ourselves, maybe it's not just to subdue the American people, but we know that this civil war that's going to start, and as I said in a few videos back, if the fighting breaks out, if gunfire breaks out, it's going to be in the agencies first, and then it'll spread. Remember I said that? And that us little people probably won't be involved, but we have to protect ourselves from the chaos that's caused by this, okay? From the roving bands, etc., criminals, gangsters, etc. Well, now we know that there are two factions, of course, and I've said this for a long time, there's a war in the government. And what's happened is these people that have been armed primarily are going to be the leftist Marxists, the people that go along with the program. So once they start moving on Trump, at the same time they will attempt to take out the conservatives, the constitutionalists in their alphabet agencies that are left there. Word to the wise. So now we know why they have this ammunition. It's basically a guerrilla unit that's been posted inside the government. Okay? Now, I hope to God that the military doesn't go along with this. But I know that, you know, the DOD is infiltrated with CIA. I know that. And with all of these leftist Marxists too. Look how they have come after Christians and after constitutionalists, even in the DOD. Just to be aware, this is going to be nasty. Okay, let's get to the Atlantic. That's really one I want to talk about because that is so important. Because Alex was right. This is something that you can look at. Again, the link is below. I would like you to read it. It's not very long, but I want to point out a couple of things about it, okay? This is, in fact, when I was a military officer, back when I was major to lieutenant colonel, I helped in writing some of the continuity of government ideas, principally on the FEMA side, but there were some other things too. And all of us, of course, that were doing this, except for the people that were, you know, planning it in a nefarious way, we were compartmentalized, so we never really saw the big picture. I didn't see that until after 9/11 when I talked to some intel people and they showed me what was going on. And then, of course, the light goes on, bing, and I go, wow, this is a war against the American people. And of course, also now we know if someone like Trump gets in there, if the people are successful in getting someone like Trump in there who supports their liberties. So this is really, really an eye-opener when you look at the Atlantic and read it. Again, I'll just point out a few things. By the way, this was written by a Norm Ornstein. One of these days I'm going to get into a discussion of who these people really are. I don't want to detract or distract from things right now, but who they really are and how they're actually tied in with Saudi Arabia. You know, I keep hearing all these things about, you know, Israel and Jews and all of that. And it actually is much more broad than that. And the secret to understanding it is in the first century, which is my area of expertise in history. But just to let you know that I'm aware of that. Okay, a couple of quotes. It says, Americans now have to face at least the possibility, a tangible one, this is Ornstein, that the election itself was subverted by a hostile foreign power in league with the winning presidential campaign, with implications all the way down the ballot. And what does he mean with implications all the way down the ballot? Because so many leftists and DNC Democrats were thrown out of their seats. A lot of those were taken over by Republicans, libertarians, conservatives, people like that. So they're trying to say that all those people were in there now because of Russian influence. So this is government-wide, from the feds down to the states. He goes on to say, to ensure the continuity of government in the event, and he lists terror attack and some other things, but that's just eyewash, because obviously it can be used for that, but they're painting a picture of justification, and he's going to get to that in a minute. Now, the important thing to understand about this thing about continuity of government is they're not talking about the Constitution, okay, and I've told you that before. This is about those who are in central control, the shadow government, who don't give a damn about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the liberties of the American people, or truth and justice, okay? It's about power. Okay, then I'm going to skip way down, and he says this. This is more than unfortunate, this situation is talking about. It is potentially tragic. What, that America's coming back? Since the threat is even greater now. Whoa. Those issues can and should be revisited, but in particular it is now time to revive the dormant interest in and importance of presidential succession to take the new nightmare, the Trump administration, into account. On. What if the election was effectively stolen? If voters' collective desires were subverted by foreign interference and a party's collusion, none would have a legitimate claim. especially since the control of the Senate, at least, would have been affected by the Russian role. So now all of a sudden, Russia is more potent than America. Russia is more potent and so psychologically warfare capable that it can affect all of the voters in the United States who are just sick and tired of the tyrannical bureaucracy and the undercolor of law regulations and the tyranny that have been placed and taken root and grown out of control in the federal government and elsewhere. Yeah, right. You can't have it both ways, Ornstein. If the American people were fooled that easily, maybe they're being fooled by you, right? The people that voted for Hillary, they got fooled by you. How come you can't turn the tables that way? Of course, realistically, no do-over option will or could happen to deal with the current ungodly mess. That's a quote. They're getting ready to move, just like Alex said. All of the indicators are there. They're all converging. So I just wanted to give you a heads up. Please look at these things and understand that they're using reverse psychology here. Again, if the Russians could influence the people who voted for Trump, other people could have influenced the Democrats. The point is, this is all absurd. The free marketplace of ideas, Obama did it when he went to South America. He was telling the students down there, I think he was in Brazil, someplace like that, and he was saying, you know, communism's not necessarily bad, capitalism isn't necessarily bad, you use a combination of the two and you use what works. Okay, so maybe the Russians do have some good ideas, all right? Maybe the constitutionalists in the United States have a good idea. Maybe there's some points of agreement with our people and the Russians. That doesn't make it collusion for some nefarious overthrow of our ideals in our constitutional republic. Quite to the contrary, it is. The DNC, the leftist Marxists that are trying to overthrow our constitutional republic and get rid, with the notion of a living document, the protections of liberties and the chains of government, on government, that were placed there by our founders and that should be kept there by our own people, so that these monsters that get control of these agencies in the government cannot harm us, but that our Constitution is a shield against their pretense to power and authority. Out here until